Well, so often we beat ourselves up over all of the things we're supposed to be doing, but we're not doing, and we're not taking action on them. And so then we attach labels to ourselves. We focus on all of the things we're doing wrong. We beat ourselves up about what we're not doing. And in the process, we beat ourselves down into the ground, creating an endless cycle of negativity, shame, blame, frustration, and guilt. So, what if way back at the beginning of all this, when you diagnosed yourself as not taking action, which often we label ourselves as not having motivation, what if way back then you actually knew you didn't have a motivation problem at all and that there was actually something else going on? Well, in this episode of the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast, I've got four different culprits that could be to blame for your lack of motivation, and they have nothing to do with motivation at all. So let's jump in and see what they are. Well, hey there, I am Jennifer Roskamp, a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. As a midlife mom in her 40s, about to be a mom in my 50s, I've realized that it's so easy to lose yourself in caring for your family, your home, and all the things. Until one day you realize you're not even sure who you are anymore or what you even want in life. So, on this podcast, we're going to work on managing yourself well so that you can manage all of the other things and people well too. So, let's dive into what it means to manage your home, your time, your family, and yourself well. This is the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast. Well, when you're trying to do something and you're just not doing it, this happens, right? And we blame things like a lack of energy or a lack of motivation. We beat ourselves up when we're not getting things done. We call ourselves things like lazy or a failure. And when we attach these labels, we wear them like a weight and they become something that literally push us down in the ground while we're trying to take forward action. And so there are an endless amount of women that I hear from every single day, whether here on the podcast, over on Instagram, in my email inbox, or really in my real life, who ask for help, quote unquote, finding their motivation. When I ask women what they most need help with when they come to me for coaching, I often hear, just need you to help me get motivated. In reality, life is full of transitions and seasons. And as a midlife woman with parents, adult kids, little kids, medium-sized kids, and now grandkids, I'm living out in these transitions and seasons right now. That's one facet that we need to consider. These different transitions and changes in season. They are a difficult place to be. We have to figure out our new ground. We have to figure out our new selves in these transitions. And of course, there's also challenges and problems. And then there are things like grief and tragedy. There are limitations and things we're left to manage that we have no idea how we could possibly get out from under them. And then there's great joy and happiness too, and all the things on the positive side of the spectrum, because in reality, life is actually full of both positive and negative, even though sometimes it can certainly feel like it's just the negative. But being on planet Earth means that you're susceptible to what I call the fluidity of life. And this just means that when you figure something out, something else new is often thrust at you. And it's important to know that we all have this cup that we start with every day, and it's full. You've just had some rest. And while it's true that your quote unquote full cup will be less full on certain days and in certain seasons as you go throughout your day, managing your daily life and all the extras, we do have this cup that we start with and it's filled up every single day. So make sure I'm going to jump into the culprits that it could actually be the lack of motivation. in just a second, but also know that you're going to want to listen all the way to the end where I share about why knowing them matters, what to do with this knowledge. So let's jump in. Culprit number one that could be to blame for why you're not taking action or not feeling like you've got the energy to do something. And that is your purpose or reason for doing something is not real clear or real compelling. In most cases, you're still going to have to do the thing, but you're just not real clear the why bother part. And as humans, we like to know what's in it for me. We always like to know the cost versus benefits. And you might not actually have conscious thoughts about these, but we're always calculating when we're supposed to be doing something or want to do something or it's on our list. We're always calculating, do I really need to do this? And it could be that the answer just isn't real clear. I don't know. It's just one of those things I have to do. I'm not really sure why bother. It could also be that it's just one of those mundane things that we have to do. And so there isn't really a real benefit that comes to doing it. It's just one of those things that has to happen. There's always going to be those things that we have to do anyway, even though we would honestly rather not bother. But not having a real clear or not being able to see that real clearly or not feeling like, yes, this is definitely something I want to do. This can cause us not taking action, which can look like motivation is to blame. But in reality, it's just one of those things that we're not real clear on or just doesn't have a great benefit to us, but we have to do it anyway. So that is culprit number one. Culprit number two is that it's a capacity issue. I love the word capacity. I feel like it was when I was interviewing Crystal Payne from Money Saving Mom. We were talking about her book. She's got a book called Time Saving Mom. And it was in the context of that conversation that she used the word capacity. And it really struck me that day. And it's really been something that I have loved ever since, thinking about this idea of capacity. And really, we've got mental capacity, we've got emotional capacity, we've got physical capacity. And it could be that when you're blaming your lack of action on a lack of motivation, it could be that you're just at capacity in one of these areas. You're just spent, you're drained, you're out of gas. And when you're just staring at a blank screen or staring at a screen while you scroll, just kind of staring off and letting your mind wander, this is really called escaping. And we need to escape when we're at capacity. When you find yourself in this escaping mode, it will often be because you're just done. And it really has nothing to do with being motivated or not. It's the idea that your cup is just drained for the day, at least until you have a little bit of time to fill it back up, right? We can reach capacity in any given day, and we can kind of refuel, just like you can refuel your car with more gas and keep going. But it's when we are at capacity and we are then labeling ourselves as having a lack of energy or a lack of motivation, well, then we've got these labels that just really don't fit. And again, then moving forward, while wearing the weight of these labels, well, now we've just made our job all the much harder. So it could be that it's a capacity issue and not a motivation issue. Culprit number three is that this is me. I tend to do this a lot. You're overthinking. And you're overthinking and you're overthinking and you're overthinking and you're stuck in this endless cycle of overthinking. Now, there is almost always some sort of thinking or planning or forethought that is needed before taking an action of some kind. But a lot of us tend to be overthinkers by nature. And sometimes we're even a little sneaky where we overthink in order to avoid the doing or the taking action part. And this happens without our even being aware at times. And it can also be a pattern. So in this case, it's not a motivation problem at all. You're just pouring all of your time and energy into the first step, that thinking, that planning, that step, and you're never moving forward from there. So overthinking could be the real culprit in your lack of motivation. The fourth culprit is this. This is also one that I struggle with, for the record. Perfection paralysis. There are a lot of times, I would say the vast majority of times that I have to take action on something, I have to do it in a way that isn't necessarily ideal in my mind. There could be limitations that are keeping me from doing it the way that I want. For instance, limitation on time. Maybe I would love to do a full closet overhaul when I declutter and organize, but in the essence of the time that I have, given the time that I have to work on it, I can't do that. I've just got to do a more surface declutter and organization. So it could be that time is keeping me from doing it, whatever it is, the way that I want. It could also be another regular one that I have is financial limitations, right? I would love to be able to buy this, that, or the other thing that would really help me get this job done, or that would really help create the ideal outcome I have in this situation. But, well, money doesn't grow on trees. And we've got a large family of kids to raise. And so our financial abilities almost always come into play when it comes to taking action on things, what we do and don't do. And so we can get in this mode of perfection paralysis where, because it can't be our ideal way, and because there's no way that we can achieve the ideal outcome, then we don't want to do it at all. And so this perfection paralysis, but it's supposed to be this way. But I wish it could be this way. But I really need to be able to do this or that. And we stay stuck in the, but I want it to be this way, but I need to do this, but it's frustrating that I can't do it the right way, right? We kind of stay stuck in this endless, but I wish it could be cycle that is perfection paralysis. And so we don't take that imperfect action. We don't take the action that we can take because we're so frustrated, maybe feel some shame about the fact that it can't be the way that we really decide it should be in our mind. Now, who's to say that the way that we say it should be really is the most effective way anyway? Could be that taking that imperfect action is actually taking the best action, right? But again, it's our minds that are tripping us up. It's our desire to do things a certain way or achieve a certain outcome in that perfection paralysis sort of way that's keeping you from taking the action, and therefore you're again diagnosing yourself with a motivation problem, but it really has nothing to do with motivation at all. So these four culprits, really culprit number one, having an unclear purpose or reason for doing something, or maybe it's not a very compelling reason. Reason number two, you're at capacity. It's not that you lack motivation, it's that you're at capacity, you're spent. Culprit number three, you're overthinking and overanalyzing, and you just never take the action after that. You're just stuck. You're paralyzed there. And it could also be that perfection paralysis. It can't be the way you want it to be, wish it should be, wish it could be, think it should be. And you're not able to achieve the ideal in your mind, and so you do nothing at all. Those are the four culprits. And so here's why knowing these things matter. When you catch yourself determining that you've got a motivation problem, you need to revisit these four culprits and ask yourself, do any of these fit? I call this being a student of yourself, and it allows us to find the real problem. So often we go through trying to fix or change or improve things, and we just are essentially treating the symptoms, rather than finding the real problem that's keeping you stuck. Identifying one of these culprits could very well be finding the real reason you're not taking the action. Treating the symptoms looks like this. Let me go back to my closet example. Let's say I've been trying to muster up enough energy in my mind. This is what I'm saying to myself. I just need to muster up the energy, declutter and organize my closet. And so I try to find different ways to motivate myself to do that. I try to just try harder. I write it on my schedule a different way. Maybe I have some rewards that I reward myself with in order to do it. None of those are necessarily wrong, But if we don't get to the root problem and understand what the root problem is, we aren't going to take the best action to offset what that is. So let's say, going back to one of my 4 culprits, let's say you determine that the reason, let me put this back on me. Let's say that I determine the reason that I'm not getting started on my decluttering and organizing project is because I'm just overthinking and overthinking and overthinking it. I'm getting stuck in the how will I know what to keep and how will I know what to get rid of? And well, maybe I would actually be able to fit into those pants again someday. Or maybe one of my kids, maybe I'd be able to pass that on to my kids. Or I don't really know what I would do with the stuff I'm going to get rid of. And I don't really know how much time to set aside to work on this, right? All of those kinds of thoughts just keep going around and around in my head. And I realize as I look at these 4 culprits, oh, I'm recognizing that, right? I'm recognizing all of this overthinking that I'm doing. And when I diagnose that that's what's happening, well then I can find the solution that's going to help offset that. So one of the things that I tell my coaching clients when we identify overthinking is thinking is not wrong. Planning is not wrong. Thinking about the best way of doing things and kind of mapping stuff out is a very good thing sometimes. But when you know that you're getting stuck there, and you know that you tend to lean on the side of overthinking, you've got to give yourself a time limit for thinking. I can spend the morning thinking about the best way to do it, but then regardless of what I come up with, I have to take action this afternoon. You have to give yourself a time container that you're allowed to overthink. And when that time container, when you reach the end of that, when that timer goes off, when that time hits on the clock and it's now you're done with the thinking that you've given yourself to do, now you've got to move to action and you've got to start taking action. And that's not to say that you can't go back and revisit the thinking or planning as you're going along, but you've got to limit yourself with how much you can think about it so that you can avoid the overthinking. That's how it looks to treat the problem rather than the symptom. If I just sat and tried to muster up enough energy, tried to come up with a good reward for me to get to the end of my closet and get that project done, it could be effective. But the most effective solution is the one that I discovered when I diagnosed the actual problem and came up with overthinking. That's the difference between treating the symptoms and diagnosing the real problem. And I work on this all the time with my coaching clients. I am always asking them questions about whatever we're working on, exploring what comes before the undesired result that they're experiencing. In reality, in order to take the best, most efficient, less friction laden path, we have to understand what is happening and why. And then, just like in my closet example, we can say, oh, well, if that's the issue, I know how to work on that. I can come up with how to offset that rather than just quote unquote trying harder on something. And when you're trying to take action, with something that truly is hard, sometimes we just have to do that, right? There are plenty of things that you have to do that you would just label them as this is hard for me to do. And that's normal. That's normal as well. There are certainly times where you have to do hard things because that's part of life. And I do have some encouragement in this as well. So if in your exploring phase of why am I struggling? Why am I not taking this action? You discover, I just don't want to do this thing. This thing is just really hard. It feels really big. It feels really heavy. When you discover that, I've got some truths about doing hard things I'd love to share with you, because there are plenty of times where you're going to have to take action, even though it's hard. I'll link to them down in the show notes. It's an amazing download of truths that can just help you. Again, it can help you take that step, even though it's hard. So attaching labels to yourself like lack of motivation, telling yourself, I just can't get motivated. I just can't find the energy that I need. When you find yourself saying that, haul out these 4 culprits. Determine, do one of these fit? Because when one of these fit, then you know how to overcome them. It does no good to label ourselves with labels that just don't fit. And in many, many cases, it's not actually a lack of motivation. It's it's a different culprit. And these four are the most common that I see with my coaching clients every single day. So hopefully you find these helpful. Let's get out there and let's get it done, but let's do it in the smart, efficient way. And it starts by knowing, where are we getting tripped up? These are some great questions to ask. Until we talk again, make it an intentional day.